Look at the people who hurt you in your past and change your story. Say, maybe they didn't hurt me. Maybe they taught me. Maybe they were my greatest teacher. Change your story. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sauna Sessions. Today we have a special episode. This is a solo session with me and my amazing, incredible, magical producer, Dustin. And we're going to talk about storytelling, the ins and outs of it. I've been doing storytelling for over a decade, the way I create my content, the way that I even look at life. Storytelling has so many benefits. It's of good use for whatever field of study you're in, especially in personal branding. So we're going to talk about storytelling, how to tell stories, some tools and strategies of storytelling, why storytelling is important, and kind of just have some fun. You ready, Dustin?
Yeah, for sure. Briefly, you mentioned branding, but I think a lot of people, when they think of branding, they think, isn't that just for business? So how would you define branding, and who all do you think should be working on that?
I think we live in a world today. Scratch that. We live in a world today where it is so important to have a personal brand. A lot of people's personal brands are just on Facebook, but you got to understand that employers, jobs, everybody is looking on social media to find out what you're up to and who you are. LinkedIn is the big one these days, but I think that employers look everywhere to really get a picture about who you are. And so creating a brand identity that is in alignment with who you want to be is crucial for success. As a content creator myself, I've kind of created a personal brand of inspiration. So when people think about inspiration, they think about me, or at least I hope that they think about me. People think about poetry. They think about Prince EA. He's the best spoken word artist out there. So when we need a poetry performance, or if we need a commercial done in the form of poetry, he's the guy to call. So for everybody listening, this is kind of what you want to create your personal brand so that it defines who you want to be.
As a storyteller, how did you first find your voice, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, well, I think I found my voice through finding a passion. I became passionate with storytelling from a long, long time ago. I think we all love stories. We all, remember sitting in kindergarten or even sitting in our mother's lap and being read the stories, the childhood stories. They captivated us. And I think as we become older, more mature, and we become this word that people call adults, we're still telling the same stories ultimately. So, I obviously, when I was younger, I loved the stories that I would read, the fictional tales, and then fast forward to me getting into personal growth and development, and even into the spiritual traditions. Like, all of them use stories to convey messages, to convey points. And, they say the closest distance between a person and the truth is a story. You don't give them facts. You don't give them numbers. You don't give them details. You give them an emotional story, because the brain is wired for story. And so I became captivated with, tales and stories, morality tales. And they really impacted me. They really taught me how to understand certain concepts that were taught in a book, in a school textbook, but the stories, they hit different, as people say today. For me, storytelling, it changed my life. It turned on a part of my brain that I think may have been dormant. I think there's many different ways, based on Howard Gardner's multiple types of intelligences. There's multiple ways of intelligences and ways that people pick up information. And, one of those is by touch. Some people need to handle objects. This is the kinesthetic type of learning. Some people may be more mathematically oriented. I feel like most people are not, but I think most people fall into the category of learning through stories. If you look at ancient history, Even before written language, we had stories. We had pictographs. We had art on cave walls that depicted stories. Before written language, we told stories, passing down traditions and tales around a fire. So storytelling is really wired in our brain. It's something that in our brain, uh, it's some part of this. Actually, which region, I guess, stories will be found. I feel like stories probably inhabit every single, probably more so the frontal cortex. But nonetheless, stories are human, period. I think we all look at our lives through story. We all love watching movies. We love watching films, watching other people go through what is called the hero's journey. This is in every culture on the planet. They all have the same stories, and it's just part of being human is to tell stories. And so that's a roundabout way of answering your question. Storytelling really changed my life, and I got into it through the spiritual tales and also through music. I love artists like Slick Rick, artists like Public Enemy, hip hop artists that told stories. These are the guys that really impacted me. This guy, Immortal Technique, he had a story, probably the one of the best, if not the best, hip hop story of all time. Is called "Dance with the Devil." It's about a 10-minute track from Immortal Technique telling a story. I won't give out the ending, but this track, everybody who hears this track is blown away because it's just such exquisite storytelling in the form of hip hop. And so my first introduction to storytelling was real storytelling was honestly through hip hop, through these wordsmiths, these lyricists being able to craft these stories and also put them over beats. They just changed my life forever.
To kind of change directions a little bit, today it feels like online personalities are all curated. People are just showing what they want to show or trying to make their life bigger than it really is. I mean, how do you maintain authenticity in your personal brand and not necessarily give into that push that we see all around us to curate your life into something that it's not?
Wow. Ooh, it takes courage. It takes vulnerability to be able to do that because, like I said, we have all these digital identities. None of them are who we really are. But I think it's the artists, it's the creators, it's the speakers that are able to share that vulnerability that really, really become the most successful. And I don't just mean successful as far as have the most followers. I mean, they can actually, they can go to bed on a soft pillow. They can look themselves in the mirror because they're not acting like somebody else. I feel like this is the most important thing in life is to not act as though you're somebody else, but to really stand on your own too and really be who you want to be, who you are, right? To really live an authentic life. I feel like, Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. And I agree with that. But I think the inauthentic life is also not worth living. What a tragedy to come on this earth with gifts, with ideas, with talents, with a story, with an experience, and you never fully get to share it, get to open that gift because you're too busy trying to, like you said, curate that gift to make it presentable. So, I think, like I said, the most successful people are those who can tell their stories fully and authentically. It's funny when we look at movies, like, I'm sure you've seen before a movie, it says some of the movies, they say based on a true story. If you really look into that, even in Hollywood, based on a true story just means that they really need one detail. It doesn't have to be anything that actually happened. It can just be a single, small, tiny detail to be able to say based on a true story. And I don't want to live a life, and I don't advocate anybody to live a life based on a true story. I want you to live your true story, your truest version of yourself. I think that's why we're here. I remember my early days as a musician, as a hip hop artist. I had went to a concert from a guy named Rhymefest. Now, Ron Fest was an MC from Chicago, very, very talented battle rapper and also musician. He won a Grammy with Kanye West for a song called Jesus Walks. And I think he wrote it or co-wrote it with Kanye West. And he had just performed in St. Louis at this venue called Gramophone. And, as I was a young artist, and what young artists like to do is we like to showcase our skills in front of veteran artists. And so backstage, I snuck backstage and I met him. I said, "Great job, great show." And I was like, I was wondering if I could spit this verse. That's what we call it. We said, "Spit this verse for you." And he said, "Go ahead." And then I rap, my most just ferocious, incredible punchline, metaphor filled rap that I could. And it was maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. And then he listens. And then when I finish, he pauses and he says, that was nice, but I think you need to be more vulnerable in your rap. And that changed my life. That changed my life because when I took his advice, that's when things started happening. Things started changing. People started noticing when I was vulnerable, when I started to tell people of my struggles, and I started to get messages from people saying, yo, Prince, man, why you said something that I have held inside of me my whole life. Thank you. You have liberated me. You have freed me. And this is the power of vulnerability. When you're able to express what you're going through, you realize that 99% of people on this planet are going through the same thing. We all share this human experience. So we can't hide, we can't be shameful about certain things, but the more vulnerable we are, the more we're able to reach people. And also the more vulnerable we are about our weaknesses, they become strengths.
Wow. Let's dive into you're talking about how you're getting vulnerable and making these messages. So I'd love you to kind of break down what your process looks like. You so many times you do go into these really complex and deep subjects.
Yeah.
So how do you break down a topic and weave it into something that is an impactful story?
Yeah, good question. So I have been very blessed to share a few online records. One of them is with my friends John and Roddy, Change for Balance. We have the most successful video, most viewed video on the topic of climate change in the world. It is called Dear Future Generation, Sorry. I'll just use this as a case study, as an example. So in this video, I tell a story. I tell a kind of a futuristic story, a what if story of the world if we don't wake up, if we don't take action against climate change. And it's called Dear Future Generations, Sorry. So I'm kind of playing this character. If you really want to convey a message, you have to put it in a story and you have to make it entertaining. So this video is the most successful because it checks those boxes. Also, just because I am an academic, I also like to throw in facts. I like to throw in stats. I like to throw in numbers. I like to throw in logic. Our human brain, we make decisions based on emotion and then rationalize them with logic. So you have to have both, I feel. So I think the stats and the emotion are so important. And we use that inside the video. And that's why I think it was extremely successful, was because we paired these two techniques together, and it blew up. 100 million plus view video on a subject that I feel a lot of scientists, a lot of politicians they struggle to convey the seriousness because they only speak to the left side of the brain. We don't really take action with that part of the brain. You really have to connect to the other side, the creative side. And that happens through storytelling. That video won many awards, not only, the most viewed, but, it was reposted by celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Ruffalo, like just a host of people that it reached. And that's what I'm saying. I started out in my, in the bedroom, in my mom's house, just using a computer microphone inside of a shoebox. But if you can tell a good story, it doesn't matter the quality of the equipment. It matters the quality of the heart, the quality of the message, the quality of the content, the quality of the creativity. That's what's important. Storytelling, I think, is such a valuable thing to know how to do it, to know how to convey messages. And I do wish a lot of and they try, a lot of the politicians, a lot of the scientists, they try. But I really think that if they had a course, a master class on storytelling, they would be a lot more effective, because that's what we want. Right? We don't just want to speak, as my college professor would say, a voice in the wilderness. We want to be effective with our message and messaging, and storytelling is the way to do it.
Have there been any times when you faced any sort of like backlash or challenges with your content? Especially dealing with such big topics. If so, like how did you navigate that and continue to stay true with your personal brand and keep that authenticity?
Yeah, no, I mean it has to happen. It's not an if, it's a when. I mean, it's literally a prerequisite to success. Like, you're gonna get backlash, you're gonna get hatred, because in order to get people to wake up to listen, you really have to be bold. And so what I do is I make bold videos, creatively evocative videos that really try to move you. They come from the heart and they reach the heart. But the way I start the beginning can be quite stimulating. Even some could say negative. I like to start with a problem. And the way that my story arc goes is I start with the problem and I always finish with the solution, with what we can do to fix the problem. So absolutely, I felt backlash. I think that it comes with the territory. I mean, there's always going to be deniers. There's going to be, haters, but you have to stay true. They have a part to play and you have your part to play. So you have to find the courage inside of you to not be silent, but to really express your truth. I'll tell you this, the news, it definitely, and when you turn it on, it's generally something negative. But when you look out in the world, I feel like it's generally something positive. I think there's a lot more good people than there are bad people or bad actors in the world. And when you really have a message that's gonna provoke people, you're gonna face opposition. That's gotta happen. You could be Mother Teresa. You could just do the good deeds for the rest of your life. And people say, who do you think you are being so good? Who are you? Why are you so good? You're not acting like a human. I've heard this before. I speak from experience. And so that's just ego. You got to understand that when somebody's ego is threatened, they're going to lash out. And that's just a kind of a reflection of how they treat themselves. So it takes mindfulness, it takes awareness, and it takes courage to really keep going. The word courage comes from a French word "coeur," meaning heart. I think the most courageous act we can ever do is to follow our heart and to speak our hearts. This is what I think it truly means to be human, to be a courageous human. And you could be male, female, transgender. It doesn't matter. To be fully human, I feel, is to be fully authentic and to be fully courageous.
So how do you really balance your message and still maintain a cohesive personal brand? Do you ever find that there's conflicts between the two, or do you ever find yourself kind of struggling to lean too far into a message and kind of forget your personal brand? Or how do you maintain that check?
I've been lucky. My personal brand is my person. So it's not like I'm trying to curate or kind of shape something in a way that's I just try to be myself. And so I very seldom have conflict or difficulty in that, because my highest value is freedom. Freedom, again, is to be fully you. And if I can't be fully me, what kind of life is this? Is the personal brand really worth your life? I think a lot of people are getting kind of called out these days. That's kind of the world we live in with the cancel culture and things like that. And nobody's perfect. We all have moments of a flaw. A flaw might come out, an ego might come out, a trauma might come out. but you own up to it. You try to approach that with love and forgiveness. Overall, I think who you are should definitely be your personal brand, and you shouldn't really have conflict of trying to do perform this balancing act. Every video, the beliefs that I've shared online have been the beliefs that I hold. And sure, there's been things that I've shared in the past that I don't necessarily hold today, but that's growth. That's the human experience. That's evolution. If you're not contradicting the yourself that you were 5 years ago, I don't know if you've grown. Maybe you've achieved, nirvana, the perfect enlightened state, and there's no more there's no more growth. You're just total love at this point. But I think for most of us, we're going to contradict ourselves. We're going to live paradoxical lives. But I think that's part of being human. You have to grow. You also have to try to maintain your values. And I think the number one value should be love, period. Because love is infinite. You can't count it. You can't measure it. It's depthless. And so I think when you can make decisions out of that depthness, that love, you have nothing to fear, nothing to worry about. No conflicts will arise, especially if you're operating. This is why I always tell people, personal growth has to come before professional success. I mean, you really don't want it if you can't handle it, if you're not there yet. A lot of people want a dream, a job, a follower count or whatever, but they wouldn't be able to handle it yet. Somebody said the most criminal thing I can do is give you my life right now. You would totally implode. You would self-destruct because you didn't get the struggle, the experiences, the hardships that came before it. So I think in order to get to that level of love, sure, you have to go through the hardships, you have to go through that, but you can also make the decision in each and every moment to choose love, and then there's no conflict that can arise.
Let me shift gears a little bit, just as far as how we're creating content and where we're creating content. We obviously your content really popped on YouTube and doing a little longer form, like you had mentioned before. But now we're kind of seeing a shift to platforms like TikTok or things like Instagram Reels. Yeah. How are you seeing the art of storytelling adapting and changing as we're seeing the shift in content?
Wow. As our attention spans become reduced, I think less than a goldfish, the platforms are really really rewarding the shorter content because of our attention spans are shortening and shortening and shortening. I don't think you have to fight with reality. I think you have to adapt to it. And so there's a lot of great storytellers, short form storytellers that are doing awesome jobs at it. If you look at like YouTube Shorts, for instance, you see a lot of successful content doesn't have dialogue. They don't have, dialogue. They don't have words. So a lot of it is, and this goes back to kind of the silent movies, where they would just kind of act out the gestures, act out the stories. There's a lot of successful channels with that. And this didn't used to be the case. This did not used to be the case. So yeah, I think there's an evolution. It's just like, who's the guy? I forget his name. He's actually the biggest guy on TikTok.
Copy Lame, yeah.
Copy.
Yeah, his reactions are
He
hilarious.
never said a word. He never said a word. And he's the biggest guy on TikTok. So it's interesting. And he's telling stories, right? He's got a problem in the beginning, somebody doing something wrong. He's got his reaction, or the reaction is evoked within the person, and then he gives a solution. I mean, this is the formula. This is the storytelling formula. So artists like this have really done well for themselves. And, as I don't know where it's going. Will things get shorter and shorter? I don't know. I tend to think that, things happen in cycles. So I think it's very cyclic. I think long form content is also still very successful, especially on
Mm.
platforms like YouTube, even Facebook. So I think there's a place for everything, but it doesn't matter what algorithm will come out next, what length of time the videos need to be. Stories will always, as long as they're human beings are watching it, stories will always be the cheat code to success. I was reading a book and it was talking about driverless cars. This is a world that is likely going to happen. We'll reject it in the beginning, just like we did seatbelts. But eventually,
Mm.
driverless cars will be a thing. And what are we going to do in the car? Well, we're probably going to watch movies. We're going to watch Netflix. This is what we do. So storytelling will always be a thing. It's important for each and every person, no matter what field you're in, to learn it. This podcast is all about healing. It's all about transformation, growth. And if you want to change your life, change your story. Change your story. Look at
Mm.
yourself as a hero in your
Wow.
story. Well, how does that change how you wake up in the morning, how you do your job? How does that change your why? Look at the people who hurt you in your past and change your story. Say, maybe they didn't hurt me. Maybe they taught me. Maybe they were my greatest teacher. Change your story. Change your story.
Mm.
Human beings, we're storified creatures. When we change our stories, we really can upgrade our lives.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. So yeah, change your story. Interesting. Right.
Don't look at yourself as a victim in the movie. You're the hero. You got to triumph. You'll overcome it. Look at your life as a story. All the obstacles in your way. Eventually, you'll save the world. You'll save your world. You'll get the girl or get the boy. Or this is the hero's journey. And the word hero comes from the Greek word meaning servant. So I think a heroic life is one of service. But if you're going through something, then just change how you view it. Change your philosophy. This technique might actually be the king of all self-help techniques. To change it, simply
Mm.
to change your story. Now you have to believe it fully, and that can take some issues because sometimes the mind is more loyal to negative thoughts than positive ones. But you just have to
Yeah.
provide yourself with enough evidence, enough belief, and you can do it. I was watching a video. It was a J. Cole video. I think he was interviewed by Kevin Hart, and he said something to the effect of how delusion was his superpower. It's like you can create your own reality. Delude yourself to the positive. Brainwash yourself. There's nothing wrong with brainwashing. That's just clear. That's just shampooing all the dirt and the negative beliefs out of your head and brainwash yourself with put some positive conditioner in there. Recondition yourself.
I think that's a great thing we should talk about real quick is how do you navigate that negative self-talk? How do you get yourself out of that? I mean, we all have
Mm,
that voice in the
yeah,
head that maybe says, you're not good enough, you're whatever,
yeah,
whatever that might be. So how do you suggest people really navigate that and get out of those
yeah,
ruts?
yeah. There's a multitude of ways. One of the biggest ways is to talk back to it. When that negative voice pops up, you say, yeah, thank you for your opinion, and I'll do something else. I'm not going to listen to you this time, but thank you for your opinion. You put a face on it. Some people name it, but you have to watch it. You have to observe it. Because if you believe that negative voice is you're stuck forever. But when you can become a witness, when you
Mm.
can observe it, that's when you can change it. You can't change what you can't see. So if you believe that the self-talk is you, good luck. But this is why mindfulness practice, awareness practice, cognitive therapies are so important because you can zoom out and you can observe it. First, you observe it and then you talk back to it. And another one is to really fill yourself with affirmations. Fill yourself with
Mm.
affirmations. Listen to them over and over. Listen, a thought comes into the mind like a sound. Every thought is like a sound. And so if you can flood your mind with positive sounds, i.e. affirmations, it'll cancel it out, right? This over and over again, right? We're a machine. Repetition is the mother of learning. So you have to do it over and 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 over again before it really sinks in and becomes habit. First thing in the morning, last thing before you go to sleep at night. Affirmations. These things work. It's very, very powerful. So just listening, it definitely works. It's changed my life. Another technique is when that negative thought comes up, you say this, you say cancel, cancel, and then you replace it with a positive thought. When that negative voice comes up, cancel, cancel, and then replace it with a positive thought. Another technique is journaling. Just write it down, question it. Byron Katie says, is that thought true? Am I 100% sure that thought is true? You know, who would I be without that thought? So there's so many techniques out there. And I want to tell people that you don't have to live a life where you're flooded with negative thoughts. You can change it. You just have to get ahead of it. It doesn't take long. It's just weeks, months of repetition and also changing your environment. Your thoughts happen based on the environment that you're in. We get 60,000 thoughts every day, and most of them are reruns. If we want to cancel that programming, then we either cancel it or cancel, or just change the channel. Change the channel to something more positive. So there's so many different techniques. All of the ones that I said, they work for me, and I know that they'll work for everybody listening. They just have to be persistent and consistent with it, and keep a positive attitude about it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole podcast just on this, on negative self-talk. And
I've dedicated my life to, like I said, to being free. And you can't be free unless you're free from your own thinking.
Wow. Yeah. Very true.
You could be on an island. You could be on the most beautiful island, drinking out of coconut. You got models all around you. You got bunny rabbits hopping around, but your mind can be in a prison. That's why this old African proverb says, when there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm.
I want to shift back to the storytelling. I think that was all really, really great advice, really powerful stuff. To go back to storytelling, do you tend to connect with people from all walks of life? I've seen that your audience is all over the world. I know that you help people who are young and struggling. You've mentioned how people who are celebrities connect with your work. How do you craft stories that connect with everyone, no matter what their background or culture is?
Just the human experience. We all go through it. We all experience the same emotions in our lives. We all experience, death at some point. So it's really, you have to tap into relatability. I think it's my training in anthropology that kind of gave me the insight into humanity and the recognition that we are more similar than we are different. And so when I create content, it comes from a place of love. It's issues that I speak to, issues that we all see or we all relate to or we all experience. And so that's the number one thing. If you want to have a pervasive message, hit a large amount of people, then it has to touch upon either a topic that people relate to or an emotion. We all laugh, we all cry, we all get angry. So how do you create content that can tell a story and evoke some of these feelings that are so common in the human experience?
For those that are looking to use storytelling as a medium to build their personal brand, what piece of advice would you give them that maybe you wish that someone had given you when you started?
When it comes to building your personal brand, I think you want to be clear. I think clarity is important. What is your mission statement? What's your why? What problem do you solve? So I think that's very important. Clarity, having a very clear vision. and a clear story as well. You want to write down your story, like how did you become the person that you are today? What insights or experiences are unique to you? What is the book that only you can write? Asking yourself some of these questions, I think, can really dial in one of your, well, I was going to say purpose, but I say one of your purposes or one of your gifts. If you answer some of those questions, and then we can go into practical, right? Like really building a website or some type of landing page or people can go to, and it's very clear who you are, what you do, what problems you solve, the testimonials, the evidence, the proof that you have solved these problems. Why should they listen to you? But I think when it comes to just the overarching story, I think just getting clear on that, what struggle did you go through to get to where you are? Because 9 times out of 10, you struggle to get there. And even on the outside, even if you've had everything given to you, even if you grew up in the family of a trillionaire, you still had struggles. Even the very story of the Buddha, he never saw death until he was like in his 30s or something like that. He never saw struggle or pain, and so this is the story, your own unique story. And I think the more authentic with it you are, the more you're going to be able to find your audience and relate and help people and really serve.
So I have the last couple questions that I feel like are a little more focused on
Mhm.
you. So as you look forward to the future, are there specific themes or issues that you're excited to tackle in your content? And how do you see, Prince EA evolving in coming years?
I've always felt like, the most important thing for me has always been the dimension of spirit. Mindset is very important. I mean, it's something that I think it's extremely important. I don't want to diminish it, but mindset is huge. Physical vigor and health is huge. It's very important. But I've always been drawn to the spiritual dimension, the dimension beyond the mind, the body. It's always drawn me to it ever since I was a kid. I remember looking in the mirror and looking at my reflection and saying, who is that? That's not me. And then, 20 years later, reading books like the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, you are not the body, you are not the mind. But who are we? And I think the mind is a great tool. The body is a great tool, but none of those can get you to really understanding who you are at the fundamental core. And the mind will try to outthink, it'll say, oh, there's nothing there. There's nothing, but it's just not the right tool for the job. And so when you can relax into a different dimension through meditation, this is when you can, I think, really start to live. That word human being is something that we all say, but we've only really focused on half the story, the human story. What is the being? What is that? And this I think is, to answer your question, this is what I'm interested in as far as, the next 20, 30, 40 years, maybe just the next moment, but it's always called me. Now, having said that, I do think in order to get there, you have to use mental tools. You have to use physical tools. You have to get into a place of health. I've created a holistic system that I call the Peak Life Formula. And the Peak Life Formula is something unlike anything else that's ever been developed. It's essentially best practices in how to optimize the mind, the body, and how to connect with the spirit in order to become your best and highest version of yourself. I think a lot of the things out there now are very specialized, and with specialization, things become incomplete, not finished. A lot of people I talk to, they say, Prince, I go to the motivational, conferences, and I feel good when I'm there. But, a few weeks later, I'm back to the old me. And so that's because it's not a holistic system. And what I've created with Peak Life Formula at Life University is a holistic system where you not only get the best practices, the teachings, but you also get community support. So this is kind of the next phase of content for me, is really to help people, because I think it's something that not a lot of people know about. A lot of people are, I think, discouraged and turned off when it comes to, personal growth and becoming their best selves. They think maybe it's not for me. Maybe I am who I am. And I want to tell people that's not true. You can always get better. You can also always become better, get healthier, and get happier as well. So that's what I'm super excited about. That's the next content that I see myself making, is kind of like a home for people who really want to improve themselves in every aspect of their life.
So my last question, and I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what do you want your lasting impact to be, and how does storytelling play a role in shaping that legacy?
As you ask that question, I'm in my office right now, and I'm just looking at the wall, and I have some of my favorite quotes just up on the wall. Quotes from a guy named Zig Ziglar. He says, "You can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want." And Zig Ziglar, he died many years ago, and he still impacts my life on a daily basis. And so when I think about people like that, when I think about, some of the spiritual leaders and teachers like the Ram Dass, or, the Ramana Maharshi, even behind me, I've got this guy, Miles Monroe. He's got a quote. He says, "Don't die old, die empty. That's the goal of life. Go to the cemetery and disappoint the graveyard." I think this is what I want my legacy to be, to really show people that a life of freedom is possible. And it's not only possible, it's their birthright. And for me, storytelling is a big part of that, because eventually I'd love to do films. I'd love to do, longer form feature films that can tell stories, creative stories, both fiction and nonfiction, in order to convey this message. But even beyond the movies, the films, the videos, when Gandhi was asked by a reporter, the reporter asked Gandhi, "Sir, what is your message?" And Gandhi, he paused and looked at the reporter and said, "My life is my message." And so how I live takes precedent over anything that I do.
That's all the questions that I had.
Well, thank you so much, Dustin. I really enjoyed that episode. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of Sauna Sessions. Make sure you rate, comment, and subscribe to the podcast Sauna Sessions, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week on Sauna Sessions. Peace.